Lessons from the life of Ruth. Go ahead, Mark.
Babe Ruth was an American.
That was a curveball.
I really do love the book. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. So as a summary, it opens up with a man named Elimelech, his wife Naomi, of course. This was during the era of the judges. They were in the land of Moab for about 10 years. Moab was a pagan region. It was northeast of the Dead Sea. And they had their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They married Moabite women. One was named Orpah and Ruth. By the way, little factoid, do you guys know this is where Oprah Winfrey got her name?
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, her grandma accidentally flipped the letters instead of Orpah, Oprah.
Grandma was a Moabite?
The husbands all end up dying.
Yeah.
Both the two sons and
We know the
Elimelech.
story. Just move on.
And so Ruth and her daughter-in-law end up becoming widows, daughter-in-laws.
They died from
and that's kind of where we
Does
pick
it say
up.
what they died from?
What do you got to say about it, Mark?
They died from Moabites. I don't know.
It's curious that in the book of Ruth, the narrator never mentions God. Isn't that fascinating? 85 verses. God's never mentioned. Characters in the book of Ruth will reference God, but the narrator never references God. However, 23 times the word Redeemer is mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's important for two things, because thematically, one of the things that the author of Ruth wants to do is show you how the sovereignty of God is working itself out in the ordinary choices of faithful people in the world. He wants you to see how these small little choices that Naomi makes, that Ruth makes, that Boaz makes, that all of these tiny little choices, ultimately God is at work behind the scenes, bringing about a redeemer through the book of Ruth.
When we think about that, we look at the biblical narratives and events on this side of them happening. When Moses was doing what he was doing, when he was on the backside of the wilderness, tending his father-in-law's sheep after fleeing Egypt, he didn't know the end of the story.
Yeah.
And so I'd love you to just kind of speak to the importance of faithfulness. You didn't know the end of the story that first day you stood up to open air preach in New Zealand.
I wonder if I can put this without sounding like some sort of crazy heretic, but I think
We're used to it.
faithfulness is the essence of the character of God. It's not a fruit of the Spirit. You look at the fruit of the Spirit, it doesn't mention faithfulness, it mentions faith. But our whole eternal redemption rests on that character of God, that faithfulness of God. Ruth speaks to me of God's faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see.
Hudson Taylor, he said, a little thing is a little thing, but faithfulness in the little things is actually a great thing. We need to always remember that that small thing inside of our life is actually the biggest thing that God is requiring from us, whether that be the second glance, whether that be turning off the TV when you should, whether that's opening up the Word or continuing on a little bit. Listen, those little steps are actually huge steps, because there's huge chasms in between those steps.
And I think that our faithfulness as Christians doesn't have to be extraordinary. We are called to be faithful in the ordinary things of life as well. And that's actually exactly what the book of Ruth is about, because the people who are faithful in this book, a pair of widows that are poor, foreigners, they have nothing. It's Boaz who is being faithful with his land.
Yeah.
Like, they are just being faithful in the ordinary things of life. One of the things that God calls his people to do is to show generosity to the immigrant and the poor. And it's important to recognize that in Leviticus 23:22, it calls owners of lands to not be greedy with their things. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, you are not to reap all the way to the edge of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and the resident alien. I am the Lord your God. There were so many times in the Old Testament, God's people did not honor that. They thought, you know what, I'm going to glean to the very end of my harvest so that I have more to myself. Boaz is one of the faithful few that gleans only what he needs, and he is faithful in leaving the rest for the foreigner and the immigrant. And one of those foreigners and one of those immigrants ends up being Ruth, who he ends up marrying, who they end up producing children, who ultimately ends up producing David the king, who ends up producing more children, where we get the promised seed, Jesus. So here's this guy just being faithful, obedient servant of the Lord, not being greedy with his stuff. And what does God do with that faithfulness? He does something amazing.
Let's jump in here. We'll break it down a little bit. Let's start off with Ruth 1:6-18. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. First, I love that. The Lord had visited his people. Scripture, it says there was no widespread revelation, at one point. You think about receiving a visit from someone. Someone important, someone of significance, but for God to visit his people. Therefore, she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "Surely we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I'm too old to have a husband. I should say I have hope if I should have a husband tonight and should also bear sons. Would you wait for me till they were grown? Would you restrain yourself from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." And this, I love this part. But Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried."
Yeah.
Why does this stuff get me emotional? "The Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts you and me." When she saw she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her.
That's faithfulness in action. Wherever you go, I'm going.
I
God will
mean,
be
she
mine.
had no obligation to
Yeah.
stay with her. She could have, at that very instant, said, "Okay, yeah, you're right. I'm me and Orpah, Orpah, we're out of here." That declaration, I share this at weddings oftentimes as an example.
Do you cry when you do it?
I should. But why would this foreigner, this woman they were there in her family's land, she's leaving that now, right? It's not like go to your family's land. It's kind of like stay there. I know they departed, but it's like stay where you're from, where we just were, and be with your family and your customs and your culture. No, I'm going with you. Where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die.
She's committed, right? And that commitment means there's no turning back. There's no looking back. Vance Havner said there's no such thing as part-time loyalty to Christ. And when we think about that, are you faithful to your wife? Yeah, I'm faithful to my wife. I've only cheated once. But I've come across 350,000 people whom I've not committed adultery with. So I'm, there's not weighing that happens there. There's a ridiculousness that's attached to that. So when the decision is made, when the die has been cast, there is no looking back. Make that commitment and go forward. That's what she did. And that's why we look at that faithfulness, that step of faith, as amazing.
Yeah.
And we're missing that today. And I want to be a man who is faithful to my own hurt. I want to be a man who, when people think of me, they think of somebody who is loyal, somebody who is faithful.
I love those videos where you see someone in a race, they fall, another runner will come and pick them up.
Yeah.
They'll sacrifice their win. In fact, I saw one that really moved me. They were running, and one guy just shot ahead, but he didn't realize that he had to turn, and he runs into the gate, and then another guy starts running he was going to win. And that guy stopped, and he waved the guy over, and he let him run ahead of him and win the race.
You're going to cry again.
I know, it's like, there's something in us, just like with Ruth here, right, that makes us look and say, there's something right about this.
Right.
Because there was no benefit to Ruth to go with Naomi.
None whatsoever.
None. I mean, if she was going to go, they had no covering, no provision. There was something in her that said, I'm not going to let my mother-in-law go and be by herself. I'm going to go help her.
And Naomi warns her. They're going into Israel, which is a land that is unkind towards foreigners and widows.
Yeah.
There's like the only way that a widow would be able to provide for themselves or to have provision is to be married. They're widows. No one's going to probably want to marry them. Technically, I know someone ends up doing it, but there's no promise of that happening. Or by owning land, they are poor. They own no land. So they're moving into a country that is not kind towards widows and foreigners.
Yeah.
And Naomi warns Ruth, and Ruth goes anyways.
Yeah. Pick it up in verse 8 of chapter 2. It says, Then Boaz said to Ruth, You will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not go to glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you're thirsty, go to the vessel and drink from what the young men have drawn. So she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, Why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? And Boaz answered and said to her, It has been fully reported to me. What?
You should have where you read the whole Bible and bawl through the whole thing. That would be very popular.
I'm going to go from wheezy to weepy. I just can't stop.
It's like that the first time you go through the Bible.
I remember my first time reading the Bible.
This has been so new to me. And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully reported to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother in the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given you by the Lord of God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Then she said, "Let me find favor in your sight, O my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants." This brought to mind is Proverbs 19:22. What is desired in a man is kindness. There's something about kindness in a man that just stands out. He's just showing such beautiful kindness, right?
There's a Bible verse that speaks of the law of kindness. It's unbending. As Christians, we're commanded to be kind. I just think it's so powerful to call it a law of kindness.
I want to make sure we get to the gospel in Ruth.
Yeah. Go ahead, Oscar. Take us.
So first, we have to recognize what a kinsman redeemer is. I know we talked a little bit about it before. Leviticus 25, you mentioned it earlier. Verse 23 goes like this: "The land is not to be permanently sold because it is mine." That's God speaking. "And you are only aliens and temporary residents on my land. You are to allow the redemption of any land you occupy. If your brother becomes destitute and sells part of his property, his nearest relative may come and redeem what is sold." And so why is that important? Because Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, which means when Naomi and her husband left the land of Israel, they sold the land that the husband had. When they come back, it turns out that Boaz is a potential kinsman redeemer. Out of all of the land that Ruth could have gleaned from, she ends up gleaning on Boaz's land, which again is just showing you the providence and sovereignty of God at work, right? And so they realize this is a potential kinsman redeemer. That means that Boaz can marry Ruth, and by doing so, the husband of Naomi's lineage becomes redeemed. But that means Boaz does this at a sacrifice. One, he has to take on the debt of buying the land. And two, back in that day, your greatest contribution, all of your honor, all of your joy, everything that had meaning and value to you as a man was your children, your heritage, for your children to carry on your name. Boaz becoming the kinsman redeemer, it means his children will not carry on his name. It'll carry on the name of Naomi's husband, which is how they become the children of David, right? Or David's children. And so Boaz is giving up a great thing. How does it point us to Jesus? First, Boaz is a redeemer. He's a redeemer because he gives up his right to a family. He takes on the debt of Ruth and Naomi. And by doing that, he makes these outsiders, these foreigners, these people with nothing, he brings them in, he redeems them into the family of God. And of course, Jesus is our great Boaz who redeems us back into the family of God by giving up the rights to his throne, by taking on the sin of debt. Ruth is a kind of redeemer. As you mentioned, you got teary-eyed. She leaves her home. She subjects herself to poverty. She tells Naomi, "I will be with you until death." Jesus is our great Ruth, who leaves his home, who leaves the comfort of his throne, and who says to us, "I will be with you past death. I will subject myself to all of the sin, poverty, pain, and punishment that this world has to offer so that you will be redeemed into my family." The book of Ruth doesn't mention God's name one time, but it uses redemption or redeemer 23 times. This book has Jesus written all over it. Jesus, I think, the reason why you teary-eye over those moments where Ruth is talking to Naomi like that, the kind of loyalty and love, is because we all want that.
Yeah.
We all want to be loved the way Ruth loved Naomi. We all want someone to to say, "I will go with you. I will not let you be alone easy. I will not let you die alone and die in poverty." And what the beautiful thing is that we have someone like that. We have Jesus who says, "I will not let you be alone. I will redeem you."
The story basically, to sum it all up, ends up with Boaz blessing Ruth. He tells his men, "Hey, just leave some sheaves for her." She comes back home with all this food. Naomi's like, what in the world's going on here? And she tells her Boaz, she's like, what? He's one of our, relatives. And then she tells her to go, and she goes where he was threshing, lies at his feet, which is not an appropriate thing, as some have tried to suggest. But she in a sense made a proposal, to him and kind of like laid it out, but was on the basis of all the indications he had given. So it was nothing out of line. And then he ends up going, and of course there was another guy who was before him in line. And again, I love the fact that he was faithful. No, let's do this the right way. Because it appears that he may have also fallen in love with her, and saw her character. In chapter 4, verse 13, it says, So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her. The Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel. And may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law. Seriously, I should just end it here. Who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons has borne him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her bosom and became a nurse to him. Also, the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. So guys, God hasn't left us with a shortage of examples of faithfulness, has he?
So beautiful that she lay at the feet of Boaz, and it's really a type of the chaste virgin awaiting the espoused virgin, like Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus in humility, waiting for that consummation.
Yeah, amen.
I love the fact that we don't always know where our faithfulness is leading. In Ruth's case here, her faithfulness led to a place in the family line of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
When we don't know what is happening, we can always know that something is happening because the Lord knows what he's doing. Be faithful to small things. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't be hung up with yesterday. Run your race today. Get back in the battle today. Today, this moment.
Amen.
You may have spent all morning going through YouTube Reels. Today, get back in the Word and tell others.
This video is part of the Living Waters podcast. To watch full episodes and explore more content that equips you in your faith, visit livingwaters.tv. You can listen to the full episode titled on the screen for free on all major podcast platforms.